What's going on, guys? We are going to watch this video. Gaming isn't fun anymore. I'm sure every gamer has experienced that at some point in their lives. So I'm intrigued to see what he says because I have opinions both ways depending on, exactly what is said. So,
If you were to look at the video game industry of today, you might
uh-huh.
think gaming is in a golden age.
I mean, it is, isn't it?
Video games have never been more
I mean, I'm
popular.
sure he's going to tell me why
Professional
not,
gaming is
but
a growing and respected sport, and game publishers
I don't know about quite respected yet. Maybe respected with gamers.
see record profits year after year.
Wow.
This surface level success,
200
however,
billion.
conceals many of the core issues plaguing modern games.
Okay.
Hyper-monetization, egregious laziness, and a total lack of passion or vision. In terms of quality,
I mean, doing a remake of a 5-year-old game, I mean, remakes of movies happen. And I know it's older than 5 years, but still, they just remade Dead Space. And from everything I've heard, I haven't played it yet, but I have plans on playing it. But everything I've heard, all the reviews I've seen have said it's been excellent. So I don't think there's anything wrong with
and
remakes
actual
necessarily.
care put into games, modern gaming has been on a consistent
Dude, does anybody remember back in the day an old game, E.T., like the alien E.T. phone home? And there was a game made and you like couldn't even beat the game. It was like so buggy and bad. Like they literally did a documentary on it because it was so bad. And
decline for close to a decade now.
it's always happened
From
too.
predatory microtransactions, to broken, unoriginal games, to the current drought of new and interesting IPs, gaming has been reduced from a form of entertainment and artistry to a corporatized money-making venture. As someone who's been into gaming for the vast majority of my life, as someone who genuinely appreciates the passion and artistry present in games, this mass corporatization and denigration of the medium is depressing at best and infinitely vexing at worst.
I have no idea what this game is, but it looks weird AF. Kind of want to play it now. I mean, I get what he's saying too. Part of me gets what he's saying. I mean, definitely like microtransactions. I'm not a friend of them or a friend to them. I think there's just too many. I don't have an issue with cosmetics being sold. I don't have an issue, but I've talked about in other videos, like all the battle passes and unlocking even like some of the gotcha systems. I mean, I play them. I'm not saying I don't. I've spent money on some of them, like Genshin Impact. But like overall, I'm just not a big fan of them. I think they prey on the weakness of humans, including myself. There's a reason a lot of people do like the lottery and gambling addictions and stuff like that. You know, it's anybody's job to protect those people, myself included. But still, nonetheless, I mean, it is very predatory at times, I feel like.
I know I'm not alone in this stance either. The countless failures and disappointments of the modern games industry has left most gamers tired and frustrated.
I mean, Cyberpunk 2077 is nearly unplayable on PS4. Sorry for rant post, but this is unexcusable. I don't know. It was fine on PC, obviously.
To
I
that
played it on
end,
PC
I want to
when it
chart the
came
slow
out. Didn't
descent
have
of
any
this once
issues.
great industry, look at where it's heading, and what we should do in response.
The dark age of gaming. All right. Let's see, man.
Before we can discuss the dismal state of modern gaming, I want to first look at the era which preceded it, along with what made it unique. I think few would argue that the mid-90s to late 2000s was a true golden age of gaming.
I will say that sounds like nostalgia talk to me because everybody in every industry always remembers the beginning of the industry being the best. And I say nostalgia, but that's not true. I shouldn't say nostalgia. I would say that's true, but for everything. Like it's always more exciting. It's always more fun at the beginning. Cryptocurrency, when it first came out the first couple years, was way more exciting and way more communal and people coming together and working than it is now 10 years later as it becomes more mainstream. So that's how it always starts. You have all these people that are super passionate about whatever this thing is back in like the 80s, early 90s, you know, as these things were becoming more popular. And then, you know, over time as the masses join, it does become more business-like. It does become more about money and stuff because unfortunately, that's the way the world works, and that's the way greedy humans work. To say that something's over, though, because that initial stage is gone, doesn't make much sense.
And for
to
a
me.
number of reasons. While the actual quality of games from this time period can't be understated and will be discussed, one of the biggest factors in this golden age was the state of gaming and the broader games industry. Gaming was considered a more nerdy or unusual hobby back then. You weren't
True.
getting bullied at school for not having the latest Fortnite skin, but for playing video games in the first place. This relative unpopularity meant that the games industry was just a fraction of its current size. Conversely, game developers and publishers were much more numerous back then. Various small and independent groups all competed in the open gaming market, and you'd either sink or swim depending on the quality of your games. While many studios sunk, those that swam were handsomely rewarded, and typically redoubled their efforts for their next project. Furthermore, these small studios were often
Dude, Halo was the shit, man. At least, I know PlayStation people, they got their other. I mean, and I know like, Call of Duty was cool too. But Halo, dude, I remember playing the original Halo, and we would go to this local restaurant, a bunch of us peeps, a bunch of like friends and stuff, the people my age. We'd go to like this restaurant, we'd all pig out on food, smoke cigarettes, all kinds of stuff or whatever. We all still smoked back in the 90s. And then we would like go to someone's house. Everybody brought their Xboxes. Everybody lugged around their PCs. We like hooked them all up and played the shit out of Halo, dude. Like so much fun, dude. The LAN parties and stuff. Halo 2, phenomenal, especially in multiplayer. Oh man, it was good.
Staffed and led by dedicated gamers and enthusiasts. This naturally leads to much greater passion and care put into the games they produced. Take for example Bungie back in the early 2000s. Their singular goal when producing the Halo trilogy was to make the best, most enjoyable game possible, and it shows in their outlook.
The difference between good enough and awesome is so big, and I mean there's this standard set by everyone here that, I mean, good enough sucks. You can't do good enough. It's a hard kind of thing to live up to, but it's I mean the game's going to be better for it.
We are the most cynical people. Like, we are the jaded crowd who.
It's kind of awesome hearing some of these old interviews and stuff. I played games, but I was not really into the industry. I wasn't making my own content. I didn't care about industry stuff, when I was younger. So kind of cool to hear, what kind of their thoughts, opinions, and stuff were back then. Also, though, I would say again, I play devil's advocate. That's just what I do during these things, and so I like kind of talking out of both sides or thinking through both sides while I'm watching this. I just find it fun and healthy to do because it causes me to keep thinking about the subjects that I'm listening to and stuff. But with that said, again, it just sounds like that's every beginning company. Every beginning company has to produce excellence. Like they just do. They got to have that product or that thing. Even content creators, they got to have those videos that pop up. Like they got to create something excellent to get noticed. And as they get bigger and bigger, they can slack a little bit more. That's just the truth of it again. Not saying it's right necessarily. I mean, obviously it would be amazing if these huge ass companies were able to keep that level of desire for it to be so perfect, even as they grow. But obviously the more people you add, the less people that are die hard about it and they're just there for the paycheck or whatever. But there's also benefits to large corporations, like the amount of content they can put out, the teams that they can get behind stuff when a project does take off. I don't know, things like that. So just interesting to see it from both sides.
If a game doesn't
opinion.
entertain us in 5 minutes, we stop playing it.
The passion you see here is honestly commendable, and was something found in abundance both at Bungie and the broader games industry. In addition to having an industry clearly committed to quality, the technological development seen in the 5th, 6th, and 7th generations dramatically expanded what could be done with video games. This is perhaps best demonstrated by the transition from 2D to 3D, swapping pixels for polygons. An additional dimension not only enabled new and interesting forms of gameplay, but allowed for beautiful art styles and actually realistic graphics. These are your killer 7s for the former, and Re4s for the latter. The size and scope of
Wait, it's crazy that Resident Evil 4, where was that at? It's crazy to me that Resident Evil 4, which I just bought for the Oculus Quest 2, the remake, the VR remake they did.
Graphics.
But it's crazy to me.
These are your killer 7s for the former, and Re4s.
Resident Evil 4 in 2005. I mean, that's quite some time ago at this point. Look how good it looks, man.
For the latter.
Like, I'm sure if you put it up against something that came out, in like the last couple years, like a big AAA game, like one of the Resident Evils, the new one would overshadow this one like crazy probably. But just on its own, like it still looks phenomenal.
The size and scope of games also increased substantially in this time period, going from megabytes in size to gigabytes. Whereas games on cartridges had to make best use of very limited real estate, CDs allowed for about as much game as you wanted, and at then modern graphics. Finally, internet access had reached hundreds of millions, even billions by this time period, meaning games no longer had to be primarily
Halo 2, man. I played the out of this game online, man. I was part of one of the best clans at the time. I mean, it's been so long, I don't even remember what exactly we were best for. Like, I don't remember if it was like overall, if it was a certain map, if it was like a certain play style, but I just remember like we were one of the best clans back in the day. Because again, I also played the shit out of Halo 1.
Single player or couch co-op
This
titles.
is back when I was young and I had reflexes and
In short, the games industry not only had the technology to make new and engaging games, but the will and passion to
God, but look at like this level. I mean, it's just literally gray walls, and we thought this was so amazing back then.
do so. And I feel the results truly speak for themselves.
I mean, it probably was amazing for the time, but still, just funny now. Look at this GTA, Jesus, man. Some of these games I haven't seen in a long ass time, man. Oh yeah,
Gaming during this
Sonic,
golden
my
age
game,
was,
man.
as the name implies, a pretty good time.
I was a
Quite
second
simply
boy.
put, gamers were spoiled for choice in the 90s and 2000s.
Halo 3 I never went to. I left Halo 3, didn't come back till Halo 4. I don't know why, because Halo 3 is considered like one of the best. But I, for whatever reason, I never got into Halo 3.
While shovelware and cheap cash grabs certainly were a thing, you had an absolute smorgasbord of quality titles to choose from no matter what you were
Yeah, but like all these that are being
looking
listed,
for.
all these franchises, Grand Theft Auto 5, I mean, they all still exist.
If you wanted to play something on your own,
Like, I'm saying newer versions of them too. Like there's newer Mario games. Like me and my son, you know, we've been playing on the Wii U. Like, dude, Mario is still hella fun. Like those games exist. Sure, some cash grabs exist, but there's also a lot in the middle. Like all these indie developers that have been able to now come forward and stuff, and put out a game, and if it's good, sells like crazy. Like that still exists. Now granted, there's the flip side of it too. Again, I try to be objective here, but like you also, a lot of these early access games that come out, they're not even ready to be early access. Like you're paying for them to like release a little beta or an alpha or even pre-alpha, to be honest. So I totally get like where he's coming from on points, but I think there's a lot of benefits to it as well.
just pop in Tony Hawk or literally anything from Nintendo at the time. If some friends were over, you had Halo or Mario Kart to rage at and laugh over. And if you wanted to meet cool new people on the wide world of
I would say the one downside that I've seen gaming, since they're talking about playing with people there, is like the co-op experience, like couch co-op. You now, like for me to like want to play like Among Us with my daughter, she's either got to be on the Switch and I'm on the computer, or she's got to be on the other PC and I'm on this PC, which not a huge deal, but it's not the same as sitting next to somebody on a couch battling it out on a screen or something right next to each other. Just isn't. I mean, I appreciate that we're able to do that and I can play with people all around the world. That's dope AF. But I just wish couch co-op didn't suffer because of that. But I also know a lot of people don't do couch co-op
WoW
anymore.
was still relevant, and not terrible. Gaming as a whole was just fun. People treated it as an enjoyable, exciting hobby. You'd hear from a friend that the new Scrimbo Bimblo slaps, drop 40 or 50 bucks on it, and have a good time. Gamers had hope in the industry, and while expectations weren't always met and missteps were had, it was good for a time. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end.
Dun, dun, dun.
The Roman Empire experienced unmatched prosperity and security for hundreds of years, before its slow and pitiful death in the 5th century. Gaming is no different, and much like the Huns and Goths who brought low the Romans, it was an outside force which plunged the games industry into its dark age, the smartphone. In 1998, Nokia released their 6110 model of mobile phones. The 6110 offered numerous improvements and updates over the earlier Nokia 2110, one of which being the addition of Snake. Snake is a game you've likely heard of, seen, or played at some point. You
I
play
had
as
to
a
pause
snake
there for
navigating a
just
plane
a
in search of
second.
food, and need to maneuver
I had something come up real quick, so a little bit of jump there in the video, but we're right back
around
into it.
your ever-lengthening body as you go from point
The
to point.
snake, man.
It's a simple little game, something you could play for a few minutes at a time, but its inclusion in the 6110 was one of its most liked features. In line with this, mobile phones going forward would often include short little games similar in scope to Snake. Many of these games were shipped with the phone itself, and while it was possible to download additional games, they were never terribly common or popular. The system, however, would be completely turned on its head in 2007 upon the release of the iPhone.
I remember the release of the iPhone, man.
The iPhone, and more specifically its App Store, offered users a variety of applications and games for purchase.
Angry
Much like the
Birds.
iPhone itself, this storefront proved wildly successful. Though it released with only 500 apps, in just 2 years this number increased to well over 100,000, and these apps were downloaded over 2 billion times.
Crazy.
Initially, the App Store would sell their games for a one-time, upfront cost. You know, how games were always sold. This
But
business model would
then-
eventually be expanded in 2009 to give apps and their developers new and exciting ways of making money. The biggest addition were in-app purchases, a system we would now call microtransactions. While many apps made ungodly amounts of money off this system, perhaps the most influential and iconic game in this landscape is Candy Crush.
Wait, I know Candy Crush is super popular, but how much have they made off this game?
Candy Crush, released in late 2012, is nothing special as a game. You match 3 pieces of candy in a row to earn points and accomplish objectives. Match 3 titles had been around for some time and have had successful entries such as Bejeweled.
Yeah, I remember
What sets Candy
Bejeweled.
Crush apart from its peers, however, was its method of monetization: predatory microtransactions. While Candy Crush was free to download, it was seemingly designed to incur, then profit off of addiction. First and foremost, the actual gameplay rewards you at every step, complimenting and praising you for making the right move or just having pieces fall in the right places. You're given dopamine hit after dopamine hit with easy levels until you reach a difficult one you can't quite beat. Candy Crush operates on a life system.
Level 5,692 or something that said. I mean, again, I agree. Like, I agree 100% with this. I can't even, like, some of these games like this definitely, like, to where you have to pay to keep playing. Like, you know, even subscription games, I'm not a huge fan of. I'd much rather games continue to do, like, the DLC. Like, in my opinion, DLC content, great. Finish DLC content. Monthly subscriptions like World of Warcraft, not so great. Cosmetics and stuff that don't alter the game, that just allows you to look different and stuff, for sale, cool. Microtransactions to make you keep playing the game because you run out of lives, not so cool. You know, I think there's good and bad when it comes to some of the new ways of monetization and
Out of
stuff.
lives, you're cut off from the flashy lights and easy dopamine. You can either wait a ridiculous, uncomfortable amount of time until you can get your dopamine fix,
And I can say, luckily, I've never had an addiction bad enough to pay for like a game like this.
or just
like
pay
the
99
live.
cents for an immediate refill. Both options funnel you into playing and eventually paying more and more, and it was this scanner box design that led to Candy Crush's success. To put it in perspective, Candy Crush alone brought in about $1.1 billion in 2014.
In
That
one
same
year?
the entire
Wow.
games industry had revenues of $85 billion. A single game with a basic
The
art style
entire-
and simple gameplay loop made up over 1% of the games industry, all because it had an unbelievably effective
Wow. 9 million people
microtransaction
spent 3
system.
plus hours each. Wow.
This runaway success told the games industry 2 things. First of all, video games were big money, a business venture that could be insanely profitable. This is not to
Clash
say
of
the games industry
Clans.
wasn't already massive.
Crazy,
It was raking
man.
in tens of billions at the time, but it put into perspective just how
Crazy,
much money
crazy.
you can make off of games. Second, a game doesn't have to be good in the traditional sense to be profitable. Making a game that is legitimately fair and enjoyable doesn't have to be a prerequisite for success. It
Okay.
just has to have the right mechanisms to
Yeah, see, like this stuff, nobody liked this in Halo 5 either, and they kind of got really, like, number one, their cosmetic prices were super high. If you remember, there was like armor, and it was like $50 US
fleece
for
people
like
of their
it was
money
crazy.
and have them come back for more.
And people did not, you know,
It was around this time period of the
didn't
early
go
to
for it.
mid 2010s that you began to see the exportation of this philosophy from the mobile market to gaming as a whole. It's this philosophy which treats games more as a dry business just to make money, rather than an earnest form of art and escapism that led
I mean, I think part of that, though, that like the reason that works is because of the gamers choosing to play those games. There's still plenty of these indie games. I know because I play a lot of different games. I play a lot of indie games. There's still all kinds of games that have great, amazing artwork style that cost $20, a one-time fee, and you get everything, and some that'll come out with free DLCs. And it's not like they're not known. I mean, these games have like tens of thousands of reviews on Steam, and they're like overwhelmingly positive, like above like 90%, 92%, you know, and higher. So that like all definitely still exists, but most people don't play those games. So it's kind of hard to put all the blame on the game developers and stuff and on these companies. When the truth is, yes, they're making all this money, but they're getting people to more and more play their games versus a lot of these indie games. You say, oh, they just have bigger budgets. They just have, again, it ain't like, you know, games like Little Nightmares 2. I mean, you know, just all of these different indie games. It's not like they're not known. Like people know them, they've done them, they've used them. So,
to this
you know,
slow
100%,
decline of gaming.
100%.
For anyone who's paid even a modicum of attention to the broader games industry over the past few years, you'd find it mired in scandals, mediocrity, and disappointment. The reason for this goes back to the philosophy shift mentioned earlier. Games aren't being made to be enjoyed, but to make money. It's this hard
I don't think a game like stuff isn't going to necessarily make money. And I'm not saying like it has to be the greatest game. Like, yeah, mediocre stuff, sure, it can make money. But I'm saying like the game has to be fun on some level or else people wouldn't play it. Like, people aren't going to play a game. If you don't believe me, currently look at Web3. Web3 games allow you to earn money by playing the games, and they still have a hard time getting people to do it outside of people that just want to try to make some money because the games themselves are not fun.
Shift in priorities that has just gutted the soul of gaming and replaced it with flowcharts, focus groups, and revenue projections. Take, for example, the explosive growth in microtransactions over the past decade.
Again, I'm not a fan of all microtransactions. I mean, games used to give you several skins and stuff in the game. Like, I think games should do a combination of the stuff.
Or so. Modern games are often replete with issues such as slow progression, unbalanced gameplay, or a lack of content. This isn't a mistake. These issues are introduced on purpose, with the only way to overcome them being microtransactions. It doesn't matter if fair systems are dropped for a less engaging gameplay loop. It doesn't matter if microtransactions prioritize the size of your bank account rather than in-game skill. It doesn't matter if microtransactions have led to some of the most addictive, predatory systems imaginable.
Again, yeah, I'm not like gotcha systems and stuff. I'm not a fan of necessarily. Like, you know, even like CS:GO, I used to do their boxes, and I'm not even a fan of those. It is too much like gambling, in my opinion, which I don't have an issue with. Like, you know, I go to the casino once in a great while. I mean, some people would argue if you go to the casino, you're not at all, you know, smart with your money. But I'm smart with my money. You know, when I go, I take like, you know, to me, it's like going out to the movies. I take $100, $200, you know, at max, you know, maybe $200 to $300, and go to a casino, and I expect that I'm going to walk out of that casino with no money and that I'm paying for entertainment for the night, you know, and it's an expensive night. So it's not something I do often. It's very far and few in between. I mean, I've maybe gone to a casino 10 times in my life, but yeah, I would say like in between like 10 and 20 times I've been to a casino, and it's fun, man. And so same with this stuff. Like, I mean, I get that it's fun, but it's just different in a video game because there's already so much. To me, it would be like it's the same with like, well, I don't know. It's hard to draw a line for sure. And I definitely get it. Again, I don't mind cosmetics being behind a paywall. You know, I still think they should give out some free ones. I think League of Legends does a good job of that with like their loot boxes and stuff and their keys. Like, do you get a ton of free skins? No, but you actually get quite a bit, believe it or not. I mean, you can unlock quite a bit of skins just playing the game over time and stuff, which is cool. So I think most games need that. I don't like the battle pass systems for sure. I hate them. You know, I don't like anything that makes the game easier for you or changes the actual gameplay of the game. You know, I don't like all of these like systems where now like they come out and the game has like an extra level on one particular system only. Things like that. It's just, it doesn't seem
Microtransactions
right.
make an incomprehensible amount of money. That's the only reason they're so prevalent. To the games industry, it's more important that their septuagenarian shareholders see a 15% APY than actually give their customer base a semi-decent product. Outside of making games with these predatory, money-first systems, modern games are often released in a broken and buggy state. The recent poster child of incomplete garbage is none other than Saints Row. Aside from having some genuinely
I mean, I wouldn't call Saints Row though like I mean, it's definitely popular, but it's a very popular indie game. It has nowhere near the developmental power as like GTA does, which is a very similar style of game. I've played these games and they definitely, you know, are I mean, money's definitely a big thing in these games, the Saints Row games. However, because I do know like a lot of games like today, I mean, we also didn't have games that lasted 10, 12, 15 years like League of Legends has, or like some of the, I mean, you just didn't have that. And a lot of that, you know, I'm not saying these guys aren't making obscene amount of money, but they're also keeping games around a lot longer to play. And yeah, there definitely is an issue with like a lot of games now. And I said that even with like a lot of the early access stuff, even like AAA or at least very popular indie studios or very popular indie game series come out and like all their games are like early access. And it's like they basically fund the development of the game off of the crowd, which I'm not against, but I think it should be a separate thing, like a Kickstarter or something like that, like where it's very much like you agree to upfront pre-order the game. It's not released undone, but they raise the money like a Kickstarter. They do the game, and then those people get it, and then they sell it. So you know, it's crowdfunding, but without actually releasing a half-built game and stuff. Like, just get people excited about the game, get them to buy it, to buy into it, and then, you know, put it out when it's done.
pull up literally any full-length review, and you'll see a deluge of bugs, glitches,
It's probably a lot harder to get money that way, but that's my point. Like, it should be hard to get money that way.
And broken features in this game. Saints Row isn't an outlier in this regard either. You had Battlefield 2042 last year, and Cyberpunk 2077 the year before that. Both
Again, this
incredibly hyped games that
they
should
were
not have
hyped
shipped in the state they were in.
games.
The people at the helm,
Again, I didn't have any issues with Cyberpunk 2077 at all.
and more specifically the publishers, just stopped caring.
I think I had like one visual bug in the entire game.
They knew a bunch of gullible saps and stupid teens would drop $60 on their latest shitfest, so why even bother? Worst of all, if a game totally flops, many of these studios and publishers are so large they can just eat the losses, shelve their broken game, and move on to the next lazily made entry. Finally, this corporatized, business-centric approach to game development has just killed any passion and vision within the larger industry. Rather than prioritizing player experience and creating new IPs, game developers are more preoccupied with garbage sequels, unnecessary remakes, and shameless trend chasing. For me, the epitome of this visionless, trend-chasing game development has been the new Halo trilogy. I use the term trilogy loosely here, as the stories in each game have little to do with each other and are all pretty mediocre. And
Again, I mean, I agree. The Halo franchise went down the hill, but it went down the hill after like Halo 3, man. Like it just started that. Like it just was never able to. I mean, it reminds me of like a trilogy movie, and then they try to come out and like turn that trilogy into like like they just had The Matrix. You know, it was the movie The Matrix. It was a trilogy. Then they came out with Matrix 4. I enjoyed it, but a lot of people didn't, and like it just doesn't, and it definitely doesn't live up to the first three. I would agree with that at the very least. So I totally get it, but these games were already kind of on their way out. There's plenty of games that have shown up that are good though. This is like saying like, oh, the movie industry has all this. I mean, because they're the same way. They have all this money now. They make these huge budget movies. But dude, some of the, like, whether you're a Marvel fan or not, or whether you think the stories are good or not, or whatever, like, you know, you're over superhero movies. You can't deny that, like the CGI in them, the act, like, dope, man. And that wouldn't be possible without all the money flowing into the industry. So again, I just think there's good and bad things with it. I definitely think there need to be changes that gamers need to stand up for, like quit buying gotchas. And I'm talking to myself too. Quit buying gotcha packs. Quit buying battle passes. Stick to like in my opinion, stick to like cosmetics and
from other
stuff
popular
that doesn't
games,
really,
presumably because money. 4 has score streaks and loadouts, 5 has pay-to-win loot boxes, and Infinite has a live service season pass that's so barren and devoid of content, it's genuinely shocking. One of the most groundbreaking, influential, and just plain fun series ever created was utterly castrated by out-of-touch, money-first suits. Most tragically of all, this fate has fallen countless other IPs and series, all reduced to shells of their former selves by visionless hacks and unoriginal frauds. The AAA games industry has fundamentally regressed, its priorities totally misaligned with the point of gaming, and unfortunately, it's a situation that I don't see changing anytime soon. It's blatantly obvious that money is the biggest, if not single motivating factor in making games nowadays, and if that's the industry's goal, then they're certainly succeeding. There's no longer a major incentive to make interesting or good games, when you can just copy-paste total schlock every year and still make billions.
I mean, that's been the sports industry forever though, even at the beginning. I remember back with 2K1 and like 2K3 on Xbox, and like it was the same thing. Every year it was just the same. Like that's never been different with
You
that
can vote with
industry,
your wallet
ever.
to change things, sure, but the next whale they catch completely cancels out whatever difference you might have made.
The only difference
Furthermore,
was you didn't
the
have all the
AAA games industry has
microtransactions.
largely
They were
consolidated
supposed to.
under a select few major corporations and studios. This, coupled with the increasing barriers to entry due to technological advancement, means there's little reason for innovation and few grounds for competition. The whole of AAA gaming has just become stale and sad, and out-of-touch ghouls like Phil Spencer and Andrew Wilson are perfectly fine with that. I mentioned at the beginning that I discussed what should be done regarding the modern gaming industry's
Let's hear
dismal
it.
state.
Let's hear your thoughts.
And I feel the best option for gamers is nothing. The modern games industry at this point is a joke. I think by now this should be fairly obvious. Huge conglomerates just push out unoriginal, unenjoyable, and/or incomplete titles
So,
year after
he has
year,
no-
yet are able to bank off of microtransactions and a lazy consumer
Wait,
base.
so is he saying he has
Unless
no,
CEOs actually start caring about art outside of money laundering, or if predatory microtransactions get regulated into oblivion, I highly doubt there will be any major
Yeah, there are a lot of countries that are starting to get rid of like video game loot boxes, like the gotcha
changes
style.
in the industry. So why bother with it at that point? It's better to avoid this constant deluge of disappointment than hope COD 37 will be marginally better than its predecessors. Instead, rather than deal with the cultural void that is the modern games industry, just go back to that golden age. A friend of mine remarked that it's sad some of the best games ever have already been made, and while this is pretty accurate, it's also true. There are countless excellent titles from back in the day that many of us haven't gotten around to or didn't hear of when they were released. They're games often made with passion, and because you couldn't just patch in fixes back in the day, they're actually complete. Furthermore, strong communities for retro titles are still going strong to this day, be it for speedrunning or just for enthusiasts of a particular series. Alternatively, while AAA publishers and studios have seemingly abandoned passion for green slips of paper, you're much more likely to find well-crafted, lovingly made games from indie studios. From early classics such as Super Meat Boy and Binding of Isaac, to recent titles like Hades or Ultra Kill,
Yeah, that's my point though. Like these games still
indie
exist.
games have consistently churned out innovative.
And that's what I said. That's what I said before. Like, yeah, I mean, these big companies, that's what they were back then, were indie companies. Like, you just got to stick with indie, man. Like, if you want games like this, that doesn't mean you can't also enjoy the big. Like, I enjoy League of Legends. I enjoy Call of Duty once in a while. I mean, I'm not a huge FPS person, but you know, I do enjoy some AAA title games. I enjoyed Apex Legends for a while. Like, but I also play a lot of indie games because I also want some of this type, like the uniqueness, the art style, like you can have both. I don't think the market's dying just because of these big
and
companies.
engaging games actually worth your time. While there are weird and bad entries in the indie scene, at the very least it's a space that cares about the art of gaming along with their community. Finally, if you absolutely have to play the latest Gears of Halo Theft Auto 5 or Gorbino's Quest, get it at a discount. Or, at a discount. All in all, even if the modern games industry is in its dark age, it doesn't mean gaming has to be. There are more than enough excellent games, new and old.
So I guess if he's just talking about them, I mean, that makes more sense. Like it's in a dark age and not like it's I don't know. I mean, again, I get what he's saying. I just think the answer is play indie games more if you feel like this, because there's tons of them out there that are awesome. Like, in my opinion, there are, like, people don't realize how many games there are on Steam that have like over like a 90% rating that like most people probably haven't heard of, but like have had enough reviews that it is actually deemed like a game. Like there's like I play these games all the time, and I have a wish list now of like 100+ games on Steam, and they're all like that. They're games that have really high ratings that look super dope that are indie games. I mean, obviously there's regular games on there too, AAAs and everything, but you get my point.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Well,
You're very welcome. I love this art style, this pixel, anime-ish, cityscape, whatever you want to call this, the pixel art. I love pixel art, man. All right, that's it, guys. If you guys like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe by hitting the red subscribe button. Also, let me know your opinion. What do you think? Do you think all of these microtransactions are bad? Do you think some of them are good and some of them are bad? Do you think that the gaming industry is dying, or do you just think most people just don't go into the indie world, which is why they think it's dying? I mean, overall, what are your thoughts, man? Like, do you find gaming still fun? My vice was I played League of Legends. I got into ranked, and then I kind of like got super serious about ranked for a while. And to be honest, that's when I started hating gaming. But once I got back into just playing for fun and playing some of these like dope indie games and stuff and just having fun, I found that the fun came right back. So I don't know that it was gaming as much as just me getting stuck in a rut in the gaming world, so to say. So hopefully that's not what happened to this guy. I don't know. I mean, again, I agree with some of his points. I just think just stay away from that stuff. Like, you don't have to consume that stuff. And the people that do want to consume it, let them consume it. Why not? All right. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time. Peace out, everybody. Later, nerds.